Welcome to the Be Dadly podcast, where we discuss all things dadly, from being an entrepreneur while caring for toddlers to raising screenagers and talking the birds and the bees. We're here to help you traverse the vast and dynamic landscape of fatherhood. Enjoy practical advice, lots of puns, and even a few heart-touching moments.
And the dad jokes are pretty good too.
And now your host, Brandon Jones.
Welcome back, listeners. I am super stoked today because I have Attila here. And I got to give you a little background on Attila. Attila is the father of some friends of mine. He actually is the father of multiple friends of mine, which is really neat. He has 4 kids, and 3 of which I'm pretty close friends with. I'm actually not close with your other daughter. But Amanda, Zach, and Emma, I know pretty well. So what's great is that every time I go to an event and Attila's there, I can't help but find myself in a corner of the room talking to this guy for hours. Like, I love to philosophize with them, and I really respect his mind. And maybe the thing that I feel like I've always had this admiration for is his parenting. And the reason is because of the result. When I hang out with his children, I'm always blown away. I'm blown away by their minds, by their hearts, by their drive, what they're doing in the world, just the kind of people they are. They're so self-actualized, so alive, so vibrant. And I always think back like, man, what was their family like? Like, what was that, what was that experience like? So I have this deep admiration for you, Attila, as a father. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on to Dadly today, is I want to hear about their childhood. I want to hear about your perspective. I'd actually really also love to even dive in on your childhood. Love to hear, where did this stuff come from? And I do know now that you might want to shy away from the credit on their self-actualization, which I am excited about hearing about. But I do know that there's something there. There's something there because these children are so alive and they're so courageous and ready to take on the world. And that's just not something you see in in a lot of my peers. I don't see that in a lot of them. So they really are these radiant exemplars. And I feel like they deserve a lot of credit for themselves that they've gone and done this. And I give them full credit for that. But I'm so excited to sit here with you and have the opportunity, 1, to philosophize like we always do, and 2, to hear about their upbringing and the child rearing that you did. And Attila, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, Brandon, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to this conversation. I do have to state again that I appreciate the accolades that you throw at me, but I don't know if I deserve them or not. Parenting, as you know, or as you heard, as you will learn later on, is a roller coaster ride. It is definitely. I don't know if you know who Daniel Boorstin is. Mm-hmm. Daniel Boorstin has a statement. He says, I always mix up the analogies, but his point is that the illiteracy of the 21st century, actually it isn't, it's Tolfer. Evelyn Tolfer said, the illiteracy of the 21st century is not to be able to not read or write. It's not being able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. I use that because parenting is unlearning. It's unlearning your past, to relearn it, to see how you could apply it through the trials and the errors of your ways, to see that there is a better way of doing things. And it's constantly relearning what you think you learn. And it's unending. It's right. Unending. So I can't take a lot of credit for a lot of things that you said. But they're my kids, so I have to be responsible for what they are and who they are, and I'll take that responsibility.
Yeah. Well, you should be very proud. I just want you to know that. I'm sure you get it a lot. I'm sure a lot of people, probably tell you all the time how wonderful a parent you must have been. And I'm sure you look back and go, man, there were so many mistakes. There were so many unlearnings I had to do. But you did obviously produce some really wonderful children.
Well, I think most of the credit goes for their ability to assimilate their environment. I think that's a big thing. Of course, I was part of that environment. Their mother was part of their environment. One thing I have to give you a background. My kids were born in the United States, in Charlotte, North Carolina, the three you mentioned. And we moved to Hungary when they were 5, 3, and 2. Emma being 2, Amanda being 3, Zach being 5. So for 4 years, they went to school in Hungary. And the Hungarian education system is completely different. To the point where when the parents got together, each child was talked to directly in front of the parents on what their strengths and their weaknesses were.
Oh, wow.
I mean, to the point of he needs to have better attention on this, and he needs to do more work on math. He needs to, and then they gave him the accolades also of what they were good at. And the class that my son, for example, was in, the teacher taught for 2 years. First grade and second grade. They taught both of them. The standard deviation between the kids in that class, this teacher said, I've never seen anything like it. The standard deviation was so small that if you take the bell curve, the middle was about a hairline. There was no standard deviation between the kids. And the teacher says that those kids taught themselves. And she says, I've never seen anything like that. Now, that wasn't because my son was there. It was just happened to be in a group that was very highly motivated, came from good backgrounds, were self-confident, and they learned well. Mm-hmm. Well, that happened in Hungary. How do you reproduce that? So I want to say this. It's nice if I could give you a can, right, and you open up that can and it has all the solutions on how to bring up good kids. There's no such thing.
Right.
4 years in Hungary made a big difference. Zach was in 7th grade, 2 years after he got there, he was the MVP of his grade in the country.
Wow.
He was that good in soccer.
Wow.
That didn't have anything to do with me.
Well, it reminds me, I went and saw Wayne Dyer, and I was in Hawaii, and Wayne Dyer, there's a couple things parent-wise that he said that was really good. But one of the things that he said, and this is, you're reminding me of this lesson, is that he said, we think our children belong to us.
They don't.
They belong with us, but not to us. They are of us, but they are not us.
They are a gift from God, and we get to appreciate them.
Yeah.
And that is another mindset completely, because to go ahead and have somebody assimilate what I just said,
right, to
look at that as a gift that was given to them, and they treasure the gift, and their responsibility is to nurture that gift through the child.
Right.
So another point we'll get to nurture to the child's gifts and the child's bent in such a way that that child can develop, because there are no obstacles as much as there's aid to help them to be the people or the person they need to be. And
wow,
that's what it is. And because every child is different. They come out of the same womb. They come out of the same environment. If you know Zach, you know Amanda, you know Emma,
they're vastly different.
Totally different.
They are.
Their temperaments are different.
Yes, they are.
Their fears and their aspirations are different. They function very much the same, but in very different ways. And how they got to those different places is completely unique. And as a parent, you scratch your head and you shake your head and you go, what did I have to do with this? The mistakes that we made as parents actually aided for them to be the people they are.
Right.
So the failure of us wasn't a failure in respect to how they became to be who they are. So parents don't have to beat themselves up and say, oh, I did this wrong. Right? That's part of the formula. Our mistakes, as well as their mistakes, made them into who they are. And you can't create that out of a can. You can't create that from a formula. You need to have confidence that you're going to do the best you can. And labeled with love. You're You're not doing it selfishly. You're not doing it to go ahead and make them into something you want, but you're loving them enough that they can go ahead and use that love you give them as a security, as a stepping stone, as a springboard into the unknown, and they have the confidence that they're loved. How do you do that? You got to know the child.
Right.
You got to know. You got to see the child's developing. You got to understand. Now, it sounds like, oh, I did that. No, I did not know that. I learned it along the way.
Right. Well, that's why I'm enjoying talking to you, Attila.
It's like one time I was at a soccer meet. They were indoor because in winter, of course, they play winter soccer indoors. And I had a friend of mine who is his son was on the same team, and he's a dentist. And he's sitting there yelling. It's unbelievable how the people yell at their kids.
Right.
And I just sat there quietly, and he gets up and starts yelling at my son what to do. I looked at him. He looked at me. He goes, "I'm sorry." The fact that he said, "I'm sorry," it gave me enough respect to say, I'm stepping on territory that I shouldn't be in. And I never yelled at my son. I never told him what to do. Well, I'd suggest things, but not in a yelling way. I'd say, "Why don't you think about doing this?" And then he'd go do it. Again, my son's ability, physical ability, is way beyond anything that I could ever imagined that he would be, or from me, but that's what he was. And he excelled at anything that was round the ball, and he could throw it or catch it, whatever. So he just was good at that. And I bring that up because what I saw in Hungary were a bunch of fathers who wanted their kids to excel in that sport, but it was a reflection of them. I wanted my son to be good because it made me look better.
Right.
It might not have been a conscious thing, but I've seen that all the time. Why were they yelling so hard? Why were they so excited about their kids and so intense and not see the kid? I seen one father that constantly destroyed his kid. And I just said to him one day, he said, "Why don't you just shut up and let your son be your son?" And he got mad at me. I said, "You get mad at me all you want." He says, "You're destroying your own son." Oh, he was offended. Maybe he heard it, but he didn't want to hear it.
Right.
But I see that happening over and over again. And well, I wasn't one of those dads. So
No, I mean, you said something really, really important. I feel like that even needs to be underscored. You said, and I'm not going to be able to get this verbatim, but it was that you were giving them the love that they needed to feel secure enough that with that, as long as they had that, they could go out in the world. They could test things. They could push.
It was a springboard for them to go into the unknown.
Yeah, they could go into the unknown knowing they were loved. And it's interesting, I talked with another guest, and he spoke about, he felt a lot of times he was only getting love from his dad from performance. It was all sports-based. If he was performing, he had all this attention and love from his dad. No sports, no love.
Yeah.
So,
like these people,
it sounds a lot
Hungary.
like that. And I feel like that, and actually when he said, he reflected, felt like I had a lot of love and attention from my dad, but didn't always feel like I had a lot of support, which is really interesting. You think about it, he's like, I had all this attention, but if I was performing. So then I got this performance mindset that I always had to perform to get love from people. It's really...
And that carries forth in terms of performance mentally. Mm-hmm. The attitude of failure or the avoidance of failure and how that interferes with growth is huge. If I'm fearful, if I move more towards security, because security gives me an unrealistic view of things, but it also keeps me from learning. What good is security? Risk. I'd rather see someone risk and fail, and then move towards security. Right. I mean, we see this all day long.
No, today. And failure is part of the process.
It is.
You don't get success without failure.
Yeah, both as a parent and as a child, too. And the combination of the two. It is a constant sine wave that are crossing over and over again.
You want to hear a funny thing? I'll tell you one more thing on this Wayne Dyer thing about failure. So Wayne Dyer says, you believe you are becoming enlightened. You believe you're getting closer. until the morning your kids are making, and he had his kids in the audience, which was great.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Until they were making, what do you kids call those things in the morning? And it's so loud and you're always messy. And they said, they're smoothies, Dad. He goes, yes, the sloppies. Until they're making the sloppies, that's when you know just how enlightened you are. I would be meditating on my porch when all of a sudden the sloppies would get made. And he says, and I knew the mess that was coming. He says, that's when I realized just how enlightened I really was.
I think this is a Borston quote. It says the biggest obstacle to growth is not ignorance.
Yeah.
It's the illusion of knowledge. It's the illusion of knowledge. So it isn't ignorance. It's the thinking you're right.
Right.
Well, think about this as a parent. If you're right, the kids are going to prove you wrong. It's as much as if there's a Murphy's Law, boom, they put it right to that.
Well, it's funny is like the universe. The moment you think you've learned a lesson, the universe throws you the test. Right? It's like, oh yeah, you got that? Let me just go ahead and throw you the perfect test for you to realize, oh my gosh, I may know this, but I can't practice it.
I got to share this with you because this is a spiritual thing. There's a verse in Scripture that says that the unforgivable sin is the sin against the spirit. And that's it. That's all it says. When I ask people to define that to me, they go, well, and they make up their own. So I came up with my own too. And it's this. When somebody says, I know, that's the unforgivable sin. Because they mean they don't need God anymore.
Right.
They don't need the Spirit anymore because I know. Anybody that says I know without having a little trail on it that says I know better than somebody else or maybe more than you, but I don't know it all. I don't care if it's a preacher, if it's somebody who gets up and gives a lecture. It's only their opinion. And they could be good in that opinion and they know their opinion, but that doesn't make it gospel. That doesn't make it 100% right. Mm-hmm. And so going back to say what you just said, the universe is going to show you that you don't know.
Yeah, even Wayne Dyer. Even Wayne Dyer wasn't exactly.
Anybody. I mean, I sit there and listen to people say they speak like they know it so much that I just sit there and go, that person lacks this thing called, what do they call it? This fabulous trait. Oh, humility.
Yeah. It's interesting I don't know exactly where this comes from. I don't know who this martial artist was. And I don't even know if this may have been a fable. But there was the story that I've heard, and it always inspires me, is that there's this martial artist. He's this incredible, leader. He's got, he's got a dojo. He's got all these people, but he's going to die. And he's on his deathbed, and he speaks to whoever the person was that was closest to him, and he asks that he be buried in his white belt. And I always love that type of wisdom. The journey's always starting. We're never as wise as we think we are. We're always coming back to the beginning. It's always a new lesson, and he was ready to take on whatever that next life is back in his white belt, not as a master, but as a beginner.
I use a corollary to everyday life. Maybe a parallel, I should say, not a corollary, but a parallel to everyday life. It's that I see people beating themselves up so much. And I mean, right across the board. No matter who you are, they get angry, so they beat themselves up because they can't see. One of the things about getting older, right here, is this. You don't have to, you don't have to have the answers. You don't have to have an answer. You don't know the answers. And the cool part about it is there's always something around the corner where you can learn. When I sit and talk with an individual, I talk to you. I may even mention this to you in one of our conversations where I talk to people that get-togethers, like my daughter's reveal party, where we last talked, is that if I can't walk away learning something, that's meaningless conversation. And there's a quote that I love to quote. I don't even know who actually said it. He says, "Argue like you're right, listen like you're wrong." Oh, when I heard that, I went, "Wow, that's the epitome of having the right attitude." Because if you say something that's strong and a person can take, well, he really believes that or she believes that.
Yeah.
But then you listen and you can learn something by which the other person gives you a perspective from their point of view. Not against you or for you, but they give you their point of view, which gives you the understanding that other people look at it differently, and you get to appreciate and you get to learn how somebody else views something. That can't do anything but enhance who you are.
Yeah.
I do this with my kids. They sit and talk to me about crypto, for example. And my son says this, and I go, okay, what about this? And we have this conversation. I walk away understanding it differently from his point of view. Does that mean he's right? Does he mean it's wrong? No. It means that he's sharing his thoughts. That gives me an opportunity to see into him, but also see into me. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Totally.
This openness is so hard to establish because there's their learning and there's your history, and they're at different ends of the scale sometimes. Mm-hmm. To come closer, it's absolute. It's an adventure. It's the only way I can say it. It's an adventure.
Now, you and your kids have a pretty close relationship. Would you say? What?
No, they hate me.
I shouldn't have said. Yeah. No. Let me ask it like this. This is what I really want to ask. What's your relationship like with your children? Who are you closest with? Is there if there's someone who is particularly close?
It's a bad question. I mean, I'll hit you because in essence, I might have a coin collection, right?
Okay.
And I have all kinds of coins, and you ask me what's the best coin. I may gravitate more towards this than that, but they're all important.
Well, of course.
And the reason I correct you on that is and you'll know exactly why I mean this, because each one of my children have highlights that I admire that they might not even admire, but I admire that in them. But it doesn't mean that I admire this one more than this one. Mm-hmm. If you understand that, you can understand why I'm very reluctant to say, well, I like this person better than that one. No, that's not the case.
My question is your connection. Do you have, not that you like one better than the other?
Well, the connection is there. Yeah, okay, I stand corrected. The connection I have, and the best way to answer this, is at different levels with each one of them.
Right.
Because my communication style may work with you. Mm-hmm. If somebody else sits down and I start talking with them, it may not work if I don't understand that person and get them on the same wavelength, or I'm on the same wavelength with them. Mm-hmm. And the way that happens is for me to listen and understand and want to engage. So the word is engage. It took me, this was a realization maybe 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, that I have to learn how to speak to each one of my children in their way, yet still be myself. So that's a chore. I'm going to be myself, but I have to take into consideration the words I say and how they absorb those words.
Right.
So I have to be cognizant of that. Mm-hmm. I'm still doing it. I'm still there, and I may say something that, I can see their look in their eyes that they didn't take it right. And I go, well, why didn't they take it right?
Right.
Is because my intention, and that's another thing I do. If I get into a situation, I'll say, here's my intention in this conversation, what I'm really trying to do. So if I get off and somehow you take something wrong,
right,
understand that it isn't that I'm against you or I said it for you. It basically, my intention is for the good of our relationship.
Right.
If that's the good in our relationship, then if something crosses you, you can check back and go back and say, he said this was an intention. Now I have something to go ahead and balance off of. In other words, it's the foundation we're starting from in that particular conversation.
That's great. And you say that explicitly, like you may share that. That's great.
Yeah, I definitely do.
So whenever you're having that moment where wires are getting crossed, but you're like, hold on, I really want to make sure that you understand this is my intention.
I got to give you this example. Zach, my son. Of course, sons are different than girls.
Right.
You know, they have a better feel for things than sometimes boys do. My son was about 15, I think 14, 15. It was sometime before he was driving. And he was exhibiting his bravado. And I was talking to him, and he was puffy. And I looked at him, and I smiled. I says, I love you. And what happened at that moment, and I don't know why, it wasn't manipulative. I just looked at him, and I said, he's growing up.
Yeah.
And the environment, the words, the countenance didn't matter. I was viewing it from all of a sudden from the outside, saying, "Hey, he's standing up for himself, and he's doing it in front of me," and it made me smile. And I just said, "I love you." And I wish I had that video, because his face was tense, and it went like it just melted. He just and it was like all tension was gone. I don't even know if he remembers that, but boy, do I.
You know, there's something I've learned I've only been a father for 16 years. You know,
that's a good long time.
It's enough to learn some lessons. I'll give you that. And it's interesting. I learned this. I don't exactly remember which, because I've read a lot of books on parenting, taken a lot of courses. And it may have been positive discipline, but it was this idea of connection before correction. And, you know, actually I told a story recently. I'll tell you it because you probably haven't seen it, but it's a great story. But my son kept repeatedly getting in trouble. And it would be at school, and I would get these phone calls from his principal or his teacher, and they'd say, "Hey, we're having a problem with Sheldon again." You know, sometimes they'd say, "You know, this is what happened," and then I'd take him home and I'd say, "Hey, no video games today. We talked about this, and you know, you got to be respectful, and you got to do this." And I give him these long lectures. It didn't really help. He was like, "You're way too many words." And I would take away toys. Sometimes he'd be grounded to his room. You know, there were times where I was raging because it was very inconvenient. Like, for example, if they said, "Hey, you need to come pick your son up from school," and I'm like, "I'm at work," you know, like I can't. And then when I get to him, I'd be so angry. Like, how could you don't think about anything but yourself? You don't understand. Like, your choices have an impact on this family.
And this was, he was about what age at that point? 14, 13?
I mean, this went on from the time he was from elementary school, like kindergarten throughout like middle school even. So at middle school, and they got to a point where I was just kind of like, well, one, I was starting to add to my resources of what I could do, right? And so I started to operate differently. But I still wasn't necessarily getting him to behave. But I was getting myself to calm down, which was good.
You were working on yourself.
I was working on myself. I was like, you know what? I can't change him right now.
Which is a very strong principle.
Yeah. I'm not going to be able to change him. It's apparent that he wants to do these things. But I can at least work on me. I can work on how I respond. I can work on my anger. I can work on these things. So I did. One day I got this idea, what if I do the opposite of what I normally do? I mean, I've tried everything else. Why not just give it a shot? So, of course, I get a call. I knew I was going to get a call. One day this week, I'm going to get this call. So I get this call. Hey, Sheldon's back and acting up. I think it's just better he goes home today. I was like, great. Come to the school. On my way there, I stop by this bakery, and I pick him up a piece of cherry pie. I get this piece of cherry pie, put it in the passenger seat of my truck, and show up at his school and walk in, and he's sitting in the office with the ladies that worked in the office. And I walked in. I was super excited because I was like, this is going to be so interesting. Like, I don't even care what happens. I'm really going to be fascinated by this experience. So I walked in. I said, "Hi there." And they were like, "Hi, Mr. Jones. Sorry to say that he's got to go home today." I said, "It's okay." "Hey, son. Hey, bud." He's like, looks down in the corner. I said, "Well, thank y'all so much. We'll see you tomorrow." And they said, "Okay, thank you." I had this real sweet, sign. And I remember my son even being, because normally I'd walk in and be like, gosh, again, here we are again.
Mm-hmm.
Let me whatever sign paperwork and take him out of here. So anyways, I had this happy expression. I go out to the truck, and he goes to get the passenger seat, and I pick up the piece of cherry pie. It gets in, and I go to hand it to him. And he's looking at it, and I said, "Hey, that's for you." And he kind of leans back. He looks at me like, "Are you crazy?" He goes, "What do you mean it's for me?" I said, "I got you a piece of cherry pie." He's like shaking his head at me like, "What are you talking about?" go to, hand it to him. And finally I said, I mean, it's yours. And so now he takes it from me, he puts it in his hands, but now he's squirming. He's like, I don't even know where to put this. I don't want it. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, Dad, I really don't deserve this cherry pie. And I go, what do you mean exactly? He said, Dad, I was awful today. I said, okay. And so you can't have cherry pie? I don't know, Dad. It just feels weird. Is this a trick? I said, it's really your cherry pie. I swear I bought it for you. It's really yours. You can have it. I said, but I am interested, why you feel like you can't have it. So he says, Dad, I was arguing with the teachers. I did this, I did that. I threw this stuff at this kid. I just wasn't listening at all, and I just don't feel like I deserve it. So interesting. And I said, well, son, it really isn't a trick, and I promise you can have it. I said, but I'm curious, if you feel that guilty about it, is there anything that you would like to, for it to be different? And he's like, I just feel bad. I said, okay. I said, well, what do you want to do? He goes, I guess I want to say I'm sorry to my teacher, and I want to work on, doing better and stuff, and tomorrow I'm going to do better. I said, all right, that's awesome, bud. I love that. And I take him home, and after dinner he says, Dad, can I have that cherry pie? I said, of course you can. When he's eating it later, he comes to me and he says, I still kind of felt weird eating it. I said, yeah. And the next day he actually goes back, he says he's sorry, and he tries harder. It shocked me, because this is literally I rewarded him for misbehaving. But there was something that was really important that I experienced. Number one, he took on all the responsibility. I didn't lecture him. I didn't argue, fight. There's no anger. He didn't dig his heels in and blame other kids or tell me how the teachers got it out for him. He didn't do any of that. Suddenly, he took on all this responsibility, and he told me how he wanted to change, and he didn't like the guilt he felt. He felt that he didn't really like how he felt inside for his behavior, and he wanted to change that. So he took it on his own accord. And I realized, I had been racking my head, missing an opportunity to just say, hey, I love you, I'm here. But if you're taking stuff on and you don't feel good about it, you might want to change that. And he did it himself. So I took this completely opposite approach and got a really unique experience, and ultimately ended up learning from that experience and many others that a lot of times our children need us to bring them closer when they're misbehaving, to come in with more love, to bring in more hey, I love you. You got all this here for you. What do you need? What's going on? And it really did shake things up. It really did change. And ever since that experience, when my son has gotten in a lot of trouble, I haven't come with this, angry. I've actually said, and I've told him before, I said, son, I love you so much, you could kill somebody. This is awful. Would never want you to do it. Please don't ever do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Good thing to put a condition on that.
Let me just tell you, I do not want to visit you in prison. I don't want to ever have that be the case. But I love you so much. You can't do whatever the worst thing. Imagine the worst thing you could possibly do. Imagine it, son. What you could do that, and I'd still love you. So can we knock this off? And it was really powerful.
While you're talking, I'm sitting listening, and we may have said this earlier in a conversation or before we started taping.
Yeah.
Parents, a couple gets together and they say, we want to have a child, right? Or they're going to get together and they're going to get married. Did they ever ask the question, what am I doing? What does marriage mean? What does it require of me or you, and what are we going to do with it? In other words, let's set up a plan on where we're going. You have a child. What are we really doing with this child? And I bring it up because, in essence, at age 16 or 15, whenever that happened, when you were talking, maybe, just maybe, Sheldon saw that you were accepting him. And before, it was a conditional acceptance.
Right.
Unconditional love and all that. But the point is, if you go back right from the beginning and say, what are we doing? What is the reason we're having children? And this is a big question. I've tossed this around in my mind a lot, and I even share it with my kids. What is my responsibility for you as an adult for my child? What is it? How many people actually ask that question?
It's a great question.
And the question lends an answer that says, well, I think I have to bring up my child now, ... What is that? To be a responsible adult? To act like society? To make them conform to society? Or do I need to bring their individuality out, that they can take their individuality and they can implement it into the world where they are needed, because that is so much vital. That's so vital to the rest of the world. That's how important they are.
So are you saying that you believed your kids needed to bring individual gifts and that the world needed them?
I wrote a book on this.
So,
right?
But you don't believe you have a formula for raising self-actualized children.
I wrote this book.
Because I'm going to tell you, that might be the formula.
I wrote this book in 2017. And the reason I wrote the book is because I did not have an answer to the questions you were asking. What are the things you can share with another parent? And what do I give my kids? The name of the book is What I Wish I Knew Before I Hit 21. Hokey name. But in essence, it's 74 pages of bringing the realization to anybody. I don't care who it is. You're important. Brandon, you're important not because of your knowledge, your looks, your associations. It's not because of who you know, who you don't know. It's because you have the uniqueness through your experiences to view things only from your point of view. And that point of view is important because it's unique to you. And by adding it to somebody else, like we were talking earlier about a conversation, the reason I can learn from something from somebody is because I see their uniqueness is important enough to listen to it. Well, turn it around. Here's a parent, you have a child now, and you ask the question, what do I want to really do for my child? In retrospect, it is to give them the understanding that their individuality is important, that their development of their own self is important, and anything that interferes with them executing their uniqueness is an evil act. It's an act that actually takes away from society rather than helping it. It isn't that your individualism is created by a volition for your own. It's the fact that it's there. Now you got to investigate, and you have to find out what that is for you. And that uniqueness that you have is important only because it filters through who you have become by what you've experienced. So you don't beat yourself up. You look at the experiences of the failure and you say, okay, that's that added to it. This good thing happened, and I had this bad thing happen, and I had to resolve that bad thing to the good thing. Well, I did, because that's who I am now. And that is the filtering I'm talking about. If I look at a situation that takes place, I'm reading this book right now. It's called The Fourth Turn. I don't want to get into it too much, but it's a fascinating book because it talks about the seasons of our lives. We have spring, summer, fall, and winter, and adolescence and childhood is the first one. Then the coming of age, of actually that time where you actually now break the ties from your parents and break the securities to be able to step on your own. That is one of the things as a parent that I need to do. I need to help that child get to the point of breaking the ties with me and not kicking them out of the house, but letting them want to move because they know that's the next step. And then I can sit back and be comfortable because I am secure in the feeling and the understanding that they can do that. How do I do that? I got to know the child. I got to understand that. But I also have to know myself is what is my motive? What is the motive behind why I'm doing things? And the motive of why I'm doing it, number one, all the crap that's going on is terrible without one antidote. That antidote is love. If I can show my kids that I love them, as you did, unconditionally, it isn't because you're performing, as we said earlier. It isn't because you're performing physically or you're shining mentally.
Or you're being who I want you to be. Or you
want, exactly, which is a terrible thing. I want you to stand on your own 2 feet. I want you not to be like me. It would be great if you could, but if you're not, I'm accepting that. That was in jest. Ha ha. the thing that's important, and I don't know how you can take this and package it in such a way, but anybody listening to this has got to ask themselves the question, did I ask the question to myself? What is it that I'm doing in this function of life that I am? Whether it's in a job, but this particularly as a parent, what am I doing as a parent? I mean, now there's infinite number of things you can think you can do. Are they good for your child? And whatever's good for my child, sometimes it may be hard on him. Now we're getting into a territory where it's obscure. But the whole point is I need to know why I'm a parent. And along the way, you're going to find out that I was wrong in this, and I was wrong in that, and I was right on this. And you develop, because the child is growing, and there's a reason the child before age 7 doesn't think. That gives us time to go ahead and adapt to what's going on. But we need to know. We need to know beforehand what we need to do, what we expect of ourselves and our partner.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a difference, and that difference is very important for the kids to see. There's a difference, but they get along.
Right.
There's a difference, but there could be some harmony in here too.
Right.
That's a learning lesson. There are lessons upon lessons upon lessons that the kids can learn. Some darker than others. Yeah. They're not all bright, sunshine, rosy glasses. No. But what am I going to do as a parent when my kid comes back to me and says, Dad, they're making fun of me? What do I tell them? Fight them? I better give them something to go ahead and give them in the form of love that they can go ahead and assimilate, that they can take back and they can do something by themselves without having to rely on me to do it for them. Mm-hmm. That's what we need to do. We need to have we need to go ahead and bring our kids up to be responsible for themselves and confident enough in their responsibility to be good for society. And that doesn't happen because we push them to do well in soccer or push them to do well in music or be smart or have a good spelling bee and all that.
My dad had 3 words, and he used these 3 words all the time. And I hated them, absolutely despised them. I felt like he was an asshole when he used these 3 words on me. And they weren't "I love you." that would have been all right. No, they weren't that
punchline.
They weren't "I love you." No, these words were "figure it out." We used to fish a lot. Dad, this spool is all wrapped up and it's tangled to the top and I can't get it undone. He'd say, "Figure it out." But Dad, I need you to. He said, "You can figure it out."
What did I tell you?
Well, the thing was like, as I got older, I started to know that my dad's response was going to be figure it out. Sometimes I felt like I couldn't come to him with issues. Like, he's going to really tell me, like, figure it out. So, but at the same time, when I was asked one time, was the greatest lesson your father ever gave you, figure it out came up. And I was like, damn it. That's actually the one that I love the most? Really? That was the most unpleasant thing to hear when I was younger. I always wanted him to solve it. He was basically like, you can solve your problems. And he also, taught me every problem has a solution. You may have not figured it out. It may not be apparent. It may be hard as hell. You may spend your whole life working on it. But every problem, God doesn't give us problems without solutions.
No. One thing that and I'm going to give me some latitude here, okay, is that your father's one answer may have been more impactful when you were 11 than you were when you were 16. Mm-hmm. The whole point is the adaptation of your child, because you said something that was important. I got to the point I knew my dad was going to say, so I didn't go to him.
Yeah.
That's where a learning opportunity was missed by your father.
Yeah.
Not to criticize him.
No.
But the point is, this is the idea of adapting, of learning and unlearning and relearning, is because this is what makes parenting hard. Yeah. Is the fact you can't just use one standard line.
Good in so many
even
other
though
ways.
It's good, figure it out. Yeah, figure it out.
Until the point where I needed him and...
Okay, let me ask you this. What do you think about the solution?
Right, let's work through it together.
And then you work through a process of critical thinking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might work. Or would it? What do you think?
Well,
that type of thing. That type of dialogue is a dialogue that brings This is not critical of your father.
No.
Because let me tell you something. Your father came from an age and a background that was exactly what was good for him to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But you were at a different emotional state than he was at that point, and there was a gap. And the whole idea that because there's generations, there's gaps. Whose responsibility is to go ahead and narrow the gap? The child? No. It's the adult. It's up to the parent to narrow the gap in order to go ahead and form the type of relationship that will help the child build confidence. You can do that indirectly or you can do it directly. Which one do you think is better? Directly. And again, there's no one answer solves them all. And I'm not criticizing your dad because my father and I had. That wasn't the relationship that we had. He was from Eastern Europe. His father died as a result of the First World War. He grew up with a mother who was 4'3" that took care of a farm, had a sister that had polio. It went on and on and on and like that. He had no background. He had no male image. Or if he did, it was not his father. It may have been somebody else. Hardship after hardship after hardship. He lost his country when he was 8 years old. He became a Serb from Hungary. Then he went back to Hungary. Finally got married and everything else. Then the communists came in. He had to leave. Twice he lost his country. Didn't know language. Came to America. Didn't know the language. Let me tell you, he was not exactly one to think about, let's talk about sensitivities. His heart was torn out of his chest, and he had a lot of resentment towards that, and I can understand it. So here I am, completely different circumstances, a different generation, many different generations now. Gray hair, see, you get to be older, you get to see the different things. And you get to see you have a different understanding of why people did something. I say that just to go ahead and not pick on your father.
Yeah.
But he missed the boat on one or two areas that he could have maybe bridged, but he didn't have the information that would have given it to him. Right. Today we have the information.
Yeah.
We have this kind of stuff where people can watch, this is a parenting. This is a gem that I can take and maybe do something with. Not to say that I'm giving gems out. I'm just saying that everything that's explained in terms of somebody's history that you can view, you can learn.
Lessons,
you can learn, right?
And that, one of the reasons I started this is because I inherited my parenting strategies. They were terribly ineffective. My parents would agree. Now, they love us. They did the best they could. We'll always do the best we can. But the truth is there are better strategies. And we all have to learn from one another. And we can't do this in an isolated box and think that we're going to have it all figured out. You'll repeat the problems that your family repeated, and you will find yourself, banging your head against the wall until you're willing to look outside and watch or listen to things like this. Take a course, get a coach, or read a book, or talk to somebody and be willing to listen, right? Like you don't know, even if you argue like you know. And all of this is so important. I just want to say, Attila, this has been super awesome. I always look forward to having more conversations with you. Let me ask you a question. Can they find your book? Where would they find it? If they want?
It's on Amazon.
Cool.
And it's got a number of errors in it, but there's a lot of good information in there.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and I appreciate you, having me over and talking about this, and I hope it helps someone look at it from a different perspective, because it's all a matter of perspective. We're all basically on a journey, and that journey is not an easy one. Parenting is not an easy journey. I've done it for now 3 decades. So,
I think if there's anything that I've learned, I want to share real quick, because I think this is worth highlighting, and I'm sure the listeners have gotten this out of this too. Your perspective on loving a child to the point that they have the security to go into the unknown. They have that as a springboard, while also seeking out ways to help support and embrace their individuality, and knowing that their complete individual experience, individual perspective, that true individuality is the gift. That is the gift to come forward. And for the more they can be them, not who we want them to be, right? They belong with us, not to us. that is maybe one of our greatest responsibilities as a father, as a parent. And for me, that really is such a gem. And I just want to tell you thank you, Attila, for sharing that today.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's take it for what it's worth. It's a sincere sharing of ideas and thoughts, and that's the best thing I can do.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you've received some value from it, please share it with other dads and consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll see you in the next episode. Looking for support with your fatherhood journey? Go to bedadly.com and take our Dadly Disposition quiz and learn helpful insights on how you can overcome power struggles with your kids.